My name is Greg Jones. I'm a resident of Northeast Oklahoma City, JFK. Live at 612 North Kate Avenue, a family of 5, and have been a resident in this community since 2006.
You do a profession as well?
Yes, I currently am a small business advisor for the Oklahoma Small Business Development Center.
My name is Taylor Doe. I have been a resident of JFK neighborhood for the last 9 years. I used to work in education and now I'm in technology with my brother. And I live at 1835 Northeast 6th Street.
I'm Diane McDaniel. I've been living in JFK area since 1980. I'm a retired DHS social worker, 20 years in the military, and DHS has really been my life for a long time.
Okay, my name is Guy Roan Jr. I've been a resident of this community since May 26, 1950, the day I was born. Okay, I'm retired from the Department of Human Services, DHS.
Yeah.
Yes, retired from there. And, I'm informed. I try to be informed. And so I'm always active and trying to learn about the environment and want to help my community.
Yeah.
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 Well, man.
Well, I tell you, I'm a gardener, and I have crepe myrtle bushes. I mean, they're really trees now. And one of the things I have noticed is a powdery substance on the leaves. Not only that, on the elephant ears, my hostas, and it was just a powdery feeling. My granddaughter, who came back from North Dakota, stayed with me for a while, and she has asthma. And I noticed that when she was around, or I kept her after daycare, she would have symptoms of asthmatic conditions. But when she went home on the northwest side of town, it looks like over that weekend, they were marginal. So she didn't have to use the inhaler or the nebulizer. And I noticed that. And then during the spring and late fall, if the wind is coming from the south, there is a pungent odor. I mean, you want to run in the house. I mean, and it feels, you can't really sit outside and enjoy your neighbors or barbecue outside. That odor just capsulizes and you go in the house. And what's the use of having a nice yard, you can't visit with neighbors because of that condition. So I've noticed that since I was in 1980 when I started living here. That was one of my problems. And it continues to be that way.
Just to add to what Diane says, there's the other perspective. When we built our house 2006, we purposely built a cast iron see-through gate in the backyard. And so your typical wood fence was not what we wanted because we wanted to be able to interact with the community and the neighbors. So we had that put up, and when we first moved in, to give you perspective, my daughter was 3 years old and my sons had twins. They were 1. And so over time, we would like to spend time outside in the backyard playing. When they got to be 9 and 7 years old, like most parents, find your kids something to do. And so they started a lawn business. And so we have been in the lawn business, now my daughter's 19, my boys are 17, for the last 8 to 10 years. And we spent a lot of time outside, and we really focused our efforts over the past few years helping our neighbors in the community. So we spent a lot of time outside. And over time, it has been increasingly more difficult to be at times outside because of the odor, because of the smell, And what it smells like to me at times is like sulfur. And you know, what does sulfur smell like? And I just have to remember when I was growing up,
Chemistry.
chemistry, that's exactly right,
Yeah.
chemistry class, I remembered that we dealt with, you know, sulfur and what it smelled like. So that's what, when Diane mentioned about it being hard to stay inside, that odor, that smell at times becomes that difficult. And there have been times, even during our lawn business, we would have to stop cutting just because it was so bad. And I am not a person that has personally dealt with a lot of allergies, but it seems like over time, I've developed more and more symptoms around chest congestion, sometimes tightening of chest. And she mentioned as well, when the wind is blowing a certain direction, it seems like it's more impactful than at other times. So my experience over the years as it relates to that is that it's been very uncomfortable. While I haven't thought about it, but the last few years I really have been more concerned as we started planting a garden. You know, raised bed gardens, growing vegetables like cabbage and broccoli, things that are actually leafed, cauliflower, and we have ceased from having a community garden or garden in our backyard because I'm not sure the substances that have been floating around, if that's going to be in the food that we're actually eating. So that's another detriment that I think has been something that's inhibited our family.
Okay. Have you noticed any odors?
Okay, any odors? Odors, no. My sense of smell is pretty diminished.
Okay.
Yeah. But I grew up in this neighborhood. I think I've been desensitized. Really desensitized, because I remember when I was about 11 years old, I just ran across the tracks. I was living on 3rd and Jordan. If you go down, go straight down 4th Street, going east, you will come to Jordan pretty quick. Well, I was right there on 3rd and Jordan. And I used to run south over there as a little kid and run into the weeds. And one time, I was about 10 or 11, and went into a sneezing fit, and that was my introduction to allergies. Okay, so one block going west, I would come to Fine Shield, and I would look down the street south, and I would see Haskell Lemon Construction Company. Yeah, and okay, well, that was a construction company, okay. Well, I would smell some kind of stench, but when you're 10 or 11 and 12 years old, you don't care. you don't really care much about it. So that was happening, that was happening for years, Okay, and then I just remember back in 1964. Yeah, 1964. I looked this up last night. Okay, we had the sonic booms. Now, I'm saying this because of the booms that we've been experiencing over here. Those booms from the factory over there. So they had sonic booms back then. It was Oklahoma City was a sonic boom test. They called it Operation Bongo 2. And it was a controversial experiment organized by the FAA, in which over 1,253 sonic booms were generated over Oklahoma City over a period of 6 months, starting in February. There's a lot of y'all might not remember that.
But
I was in there.
I don't remember, sir.
I wasn't here yet.
Yeah, I was in that.
Uh-huh.
And when you're 13, I was 13 years old. Yeah. And it was just something exciting. Oh, everybody was saying, the younger kids, boom, sonic boom. And then they showed a guy on there with a sign said Boomtown, USA. So I had almost forgot about that.
So you've been
But this had
exposed.
me, I've been in this area all the time. So I feel like I've been a little desensitized from all of this. But when they have the booms that come up there, I haven't really been bothered by any problems with the environment, I think. But by information that I get, I'm always concerned. It has me really concerned. So I'm concerned about air quality, water quality, and things like that, you know. But so far, you know, I've been okay. It just it hasn't really bothered me a lot.
You stay a little bit further,
Yeah, plus,
further
I think it's
north than we do.
Okay,
We
that's
stay- yeah.
that's why I really want to help my community because I'm more north.
Yes.
So it's mitigated all these old sound boom problems. It's a little bit, but I hear them.
So I'm farther east than all the neighbors here who are today, so I deal with a little bit different. It seems like a lot of this is proximity based about where you're at and which way the
Yeah.
wind's blowing, and
Yeah.
if you're far enough north, you hear the booms, but they're a little muted a little bit. And so I'm on the farthest eastern edge of JFK near Douglas High School. So I'm close to the Citgo plant. The Citgo plant makes this humming sound that comes when they operate. And so we've had some neighbors who have moved in and didn't know that and have moved out who were able to afford to be able to do that. But that's something that I've been recording the last few years. And so I feel like I have been kind of the documentarian of the group. So I have a lot of footage, sound recordings of kind of what's been happening in the area. So Citgo is one of my issues of sometimes there's nights when it's like your ears are ringing. And so you like turn on a fan or you turn on music at night to like not hear that. And so my house is behind some apartment complex. So I'm sure they get kind of blasted more and then it's shielded a little bit coming to my house. But it's still very like evident in my room in my house to hear that ringing. That also that has a smokestack. Not sure, you know, obviously what is coming out of that. And then the other issue that I've faced on the eastern side of JFK is Height Plastics. So that's a name that's not on the list, but that is, they do a lot of, from my understanding, just like plastic recycling. And there's just plastic kind of, you know, everywhere on their property. So it's not very fun to look at, but it's kind of like a sawzall tool where they're like chopping up the plastic. And that's very, very loud. And so it kind of comes in waves a little bit. And there's been nights I have video footage of them going after midnight, making these like, it's very, very loud. So it's loud at my house. And then if you go to the kind of the southern edge of JFK where I have the video from, it is very loud. So they kind of do that all hours of the night. It kind of comes and goes depending on their business, I think, of like how much plastic they have and how much they have to do. So it's not that consistent, but when they do it, it is very loud. And last thing I'll mention about them is a few years ago, I'm blanking on the date, they had a very big plastics fire. It made it on the news, helicopters in the air. The fire marshal said on TV to like turn off your air conditioning units, close your windows. Well, we don't have a really great way to communicate to our neighbors other than there's just this massive fire at the end of our block. And so that was a big concern for me. It was like, we are burning plastic in the air. And so we have video footage of that. We've saved footage from the news programming. And then I was kind of driving around. Anytime there's a fire, which is semi-frequently around here, I try to get video evidence of that. So if you guys need that, we're happy to share it with you. Also, the car crushing plant seems to have a few semi-big fires every year as they crush cars. So.
And they even had a fatal accident down here, didn't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
so a few years ago.
A few years ago, a fatal accident, a man got crushed. Well, my house is one of the oldest, and yes, structural damage, and it's always on the east side of the house. And I noticed that about every neighbor on Everest, they had to either fix or put some more cement between the bricks because you could see it cracking. My foundation, the stem walls, it has just cracked. It has I call it a hairline fracture in the stem wall. And every house on the east side has the same thing. That's what we've noticed. Now sometimes the boom can be so loud that it actually shakes the windows. And then and sometimes they're so sudden. You know, you might be baking a cake or talking on the phone and just out of nowhere, boom. I mean, it's loud. I think it's worse than a sonic boom. And it frightens my dog. I have a little chihuahua who's just nervous. And if it does that to him, can you imagine the little ones that going off? And we have a nursery on the corner of Lottie and Ford. Can you imagine that? So I'm saying just the sound, not only the damage to the house, and then who's going to buy my house if I decide to sell it with that structural damage? Because I'm going to have to disclose it. So I can't sell it.
So 2 observations I have, and it just came to mind as Diane was talking. When we experienced the Alpha P. Murrow building explosion years ago, I was actually out in Spencer at my parents' house when I heard that explosion. And I heard it all the way out there, and we know how fatal that was. I'm not comparing it, but I'm saying it's that suddenness of that kind of explosion that I experienced. I have the privilege of working at home, so I'm at home during the day. My house faces west, so the back part of my home would be to the east, and that's where my kind of home office is, if you will. And it is that rattling, sharp, loud explosions. And we used to call them booms until we really had to recategorize it that it really feels like an explosion.
Yeah.
And the only other way I can describe it is sitting in a movie theater with the D-box that you get all the effects and the shaking and all that. That's it, and you're in there and all of a sudden you have a loud explosion. That's how it feels, because you're shaking, the house is shaking. For me, my mailbox, again, my house faces to the west, has actually shifted. So when you look at my mailbox, it's no longer parallel with the street. It's actually shifted, and bricks from its bricked-in mailbox have fell off over time. Inside my house, that would be, as kind of Taylor was describing, on the south side of my house, which would be closest to where the explosions are coming from, in my son's bedroom. 2 years ago, we got the carpet replaced. When they pulled the carpet up, there was a separation between the wall and the concrete.
Wow, the stem wall, yeah.
And I want to say it was like that. And we had no idea what, and then my mind went back to, over time, there's been shifting in our house. So you see cracks, but some of that's just drywall, but we're gonna have to get probably someone to come out, look at the foundation.
Ditto to that.
The other thing I would add is, love the community, wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I want to say that as a disclaimer.
Yeah.
But when I built my house, no, it was never disclosed to me the types of things in the community. Now, is there some of that, Greg, you need to go around and look and, discover, you think about schools. I didn't think about, do I need to be concerned about a recycling plant and a Haskell Lemming and a Sitco plant? If you're selling homes in a community neighborhood, that there would be some of the environmental issues you would not have to face. So I would just say, add to that, it was never disclosed. So over time, it's been a little discouraging as people are moving into the community, wanting to know some of the things that are going on, and you have to really tell them. And in a lot of cases, it's discouraged people wanting to move into the community. And so that's the other thing that's been very disappointing as well.
It's a great point. I have a marketing background as well, so we often talk about new neighbors coming in and how to talk about JFK and what we think we have here is really special, and we check on our neighbors and make visits and write cards and deliver food. Like that's just kind of a normal part of the community. We want other people to be involved, and so I'll just echo what Greg said, is it's challenging when you want to be honest about what is happening for people to want to come here, even if they do want to come here, which people have expressed pretty often. My relationship with the Booms, I get to work at home as well too and have some flexibility, so I hear them throughout the day and when they come. I get startled, I would say. Like there have been times that I physically kind of jump, but I also think about the young kids, got to work with students for many, many years, still do. Just think about the young kids as well as our elderly neighbors. There's neighbors that we check on frequently. And so just thinking about how they kind of get startled by that, as well as veterans who might have some PTSD. And so that might be a triggering event for them. And so we can pause.
And I wondered if they told the new owners who are building this is going on. They're building and expanding. Are they disclosing
Good question.
all of those kind of facts? And then we've got student housing up here. The library students in the library, they're inhaling smoke and dust and listening to the booms. What is it doing to them? What's the long-term health risk that you all are facing? You all will go back to your homes, whether it's Iowa, Norman, but we're stuck basically here. I was the first neighborhood president in JFK, and we would meet over at East 6th Street Christian Church. So I came from Creston Hill Neighborhood Association, which I formed. And so when I get in a neighborhood, I want to know my neighbors. I want to know how they're doing, if I can be of any assistance. Can they be of assistance to me? Because Greg's kids have mowed my yard several times. And so I want to be a good neighbor. Coming from Arkansas, we're just some down-home good people. And the neighbors in JFK are wonderful. You couldn't ask for it better. But, so yeah, that's part of my organization.
I would just add that over time, when we began to realize that what we were experiencing wasn't normal.
Yeah.
That's the way I think about it. Wasn't normal, and that we actually may have some voice. We began to really say, what can we do? So I can remember as early as 2010, we started tracking these explosions.
Yeah.
We started kind of old school on a piece of paper, calling tree, marking it down, but started really trying to take notice and shape. And then over time, with the neighborhood, people talking, President Ms. Davis, what are some things that we could actually take a part in and do? So informing city officials, and over time we have done a number of things. I think, I feel like we've exhausted. The helpline, not the helpline, what's it called that you?
Action
The
Center.
Action Center. Let me tell you about the Action Center. The Action Center, we wore the Action Center out. We had a meeting, they said, look, do not report another explosion. We can't take it no more. This is my words. In other words, there's nothing we can do. So you reporting it to the Action Center is, because we first told, report it to the Action Center, okay? And they got so many, over time, so many responses. Then we found that even outside of our neighborhood, along 4th Street and other businesses are also recording data, also were taking note of what was taking place as well. And so I say that we begin then to look at what are the things happening across the country. We're fortunate in our neighborhood, we have some historians, some librarians, understand history very well. At the same time, you have this thing called a renaissance, so there's new development coming to the community. We can see Paige Woodson, the school being redone, and the development around us. And so there was all these conversations around how do we help develop in this community and neighborhood. Our proximity to downtown. We're merely blocks away from downtown, and all of the hotels being built. Matter of fact, I think the number was somewhere between 20 to 30 hotels being built. And yet, just east, here's this community dealing with a problem that no one seems to want to solve. So our involvement environmentally, we've been trying for a number of years.
And I tell you, look, our president, Ms. Davis, has just almost exhausted all her time, all her energy trying to resolve these issues. I mean, going to meetings and talking to the mayor, and talking to the fire department. I mean, and I know she must be totally exhausted and wore out because she has done a magnificent job in trying to get all this documentation. And we still having it. We're still having the same problem.
I want to be. I'm glad you brought up the Action Center. Was it Ms. Davis that they weren't actually tracking it? There was someone who's told us that they would track, and then we asked for the history records, and they couldn't provide them. So it seemed like we were calling in vain, at least for a season, that they would take the call, not record it, not be able to provide us, because we did have someone come say, can you provide the records? We tried to gather, and the Action Center, who we were supposed to call the city, wasn't able to present those to us. So that was a little deflating in a lot of different ways. So I think we've lost some data because I don't know if we might have been double tracking, but sometimes people just call rather than write it down. So there's a kind of a lost boom there. So it's hard to kind of know what the consistency has been. The other thing I think about is the time taken that we've all spent on this and what it could have been spent on.
Yeah.
So, like, Greg works with small businesses. I love working with small businesses. I mean, we can go around the room of, like, we're passionate about other things, and we spend time on other things regardless, but we also are like, we have to spend time on this, right? And what is the opportunity cost of a neighborhood spending time on trying to fight these things? Because we don't get paid for any of this. The hour we're spending here right now, like, I could be meeting with someone else, I can be thinking about bigger ideas, I can be thinking about ways to improve the community just like other leaders here, but yet we're having conversations year after year and meeting after meeting. I mean, we spend a portion of each meeting speaking about environmental justice issues that could be talking about computer labs that we could be building and exposure to technology and business and all these things. So it's also a time issue for our neighborhood of, like, how many hours has one community put towards something that it could have been put towards something else.
It could have been dealt with more efficiently.
Yes.
And we have neighbors, because I live in a really older part of JFK, about 10 of our neighbors have passed away. They went on to glory with these problems and issues not resolved. And one lady, before she passed, she said, I'm just tired. I'm just tired of dealing with it. And she stopped coming to meetings.
I guess I would, on the back end of what Diane said, what I think about now is having young adult children, 19 and 17. I want them to, whatever the legacy me and my wife leave to them, this is part of their community. And I want them to be able to feel like this is home for them. And not to be worried or thinking about some of the issues that we've been dealing with. And now when I hear this historical perspective of sonic booms and Haskell Lemon plant, way back in the 60s or whatever that was, and now we are, 2023, when is this going to change is my question. I don't want my kids to deal with that. And then at some point when I'm gone on, they're still dealing with the fact that they love this community, but yet we're dealing with the same old environmental issues. Like I said.
And you got to start thinking, does anyone care? We've been talking about the same thing over and over. Is anyone listening? Do you hear me?
Well, I believe we're gonna have a good future, especially because of this big development here. You know, that's what I think. I think we'll have a good future here. And you all, Capstone, you know, putting out information.
I think you all have brought our concerns to the forefront. And just by bringing it to the forefront, I think people will now sit up and take notice, which gives me hope that we'll have a brighter future because of the development, because OU sits within JFK Neighborhood Association. And I too, like Greg, I want to leave my daughter and granddaughter a legacy that they will be proud of. So, you know, I grew up, Mama bought this house, and I grew up right here in JFK, and we ran to the park, and we did this, and this was our neighbor, and this is the closeness that we have. And that's what we pass on to our offsprings, so they will have it better, make it better, because they're energetic and all of that. So that's what I see. I see bright things. I want to be optimistic. There is hope. Was it Jesse Jackson? Keep hope alive. We want to keep that hope and take it a little bit further. And because of you students and professors, I'm sure the future looks bright.
I think the hope for me would be, as we work with outside entities, is the hope for follow through. I think something of being in the neighborhood for almost a decade is kind of broken promises that are made to residents. And so my hope for the future is that when promises are made or something says it's going to happen, then it actually happens. So there's been times that groups have come in and promised that X, Y, and Z will happen, and then plans change, and you know, so it's not quite that. You don't have a place to meet, and you did, and you know, it's like there's been time and time again that organizations have come in and said, this is what we can do, this is what's going to happen, and then the follow through hasn't come. And so time and time again, we continue to show up and continue to show up and continue to show up, even when new groups come and kind of go. So first, I think I'll just echo, we thank you. We've already seen the work you've done. Our hope is for even other entities, since Greg kind of mentioned it, was, you know, the eye of the city has kind of turned to the east side for development. And so that just means there's a lot more people who are driving through. There's a lot more people who are interested in land who haven't been. And so there's an opportunity for there to be promises that aren't going to be kept. So my hope is that we get to work with really great organizations who kind of keep their word, and we get to partner in really fun ways.
Yeah, I would just add, you know, my hope is that, you know, that when my kids become adults and families, that they'll be able to live in this community and thrive. And again, the issues that have been at the forefront will be eradicated, and that the city will recognize that this community in JFK is just as much a part of the thriving community as it is downtown or anyone else. And that our families, our kids, and our people will be treated just like anywhere else. And there will be opportunities for us to live and thrive within Oklahoma City and the surrounding areas. And thank you for what you're doing. I think it means a lot to care, to come, share, and then to advocate for us. So thank you.
I am Eva King, and I'm a retired teacher.
I'm Marion West, and I'm a retired nurse.
I'm Rodney Redis, and I lead a nonprofit and run a business.
And I'm Crusher Redis. I work for a charter school district here in Oklahoma City as a project manager.
Well, I have experience. Well, naturally, everybody knows about booms. And there are various loudness. The loudest ones shake the homes. Fortunately, my house is not as large as some of the big houses, so I have not had structural damage, but others have. I also have experienced the dust or whatever substance it is. It settles on my patio table, and when I get ready to get it off in the spring and dust everything, I have to take a scraper to scrape it off.
And my house is one of the older houses in the area, and also bordering with what Eva has mentioned about the pollution and the dust or whatever that filament in the air is settles on the house. And my old house has siding on it, and it does not clean as well. I would almost have to take a power sprayer to clean it up. I don't know what the settlement is, but I do know that it's hard on the material substances of the houses and its surroundings.
As for me, working from home often, I'm outside, especially in the summertime. And if I'm outside, if I'm not wearing a mask, it's hard to breathe. That's the smell, the odor that's coming from the south is pretty bad. And so my biggest concern is down the road is how is this going to affect my lungs or my body over time, experiencing this now. If I'm smart, and my wife is really good about, honey, can you smell that? And typically she'll smell it before I will. And when she says it, I either put on a mask or I run inside. So, and then I just kind of wait a while and go back outside. But again, it's not knowing, we have no idea what the long-term effects will be. So that's my greatest concern.
So we probably won't go in this order each and every time, but my turn for this first question. So my husband talked about us going outside. We love being outside, and I work the landscape. I weed it, and that's therapy for me. So I love doing that. But if I do it and there's a smell, I either go inside or I put a mask on. Same thing with just going to the mailbox. If you see the smoke and the wind is blowing our way and the smell is out there, we have to cover up or not go out at all. The blessing is we have a garage, but if I want to be out on my patio and eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner on the weekends, it's like, is the air killing us? I have to go back inside if I smell it. So my concern, and I'll share this, I haven't shared this with many people, but I came in 2009, and I've always had a clean bill of health all my life, and I'm thanking God for that. Well, last year in February, I was diagnosed with scleroderma.
With what?
Scleroderma. And it's a tightening of the skin, and there's some things that go along with that. Autoimmune and all that stuff. And so when I did the research, they said they don't know where that came from, but they said it could be environmental, and that was in many different articles. And so of course, I'm thinking about where I live, and we're still processing this whole diagnosis, and I'm ready to move. And so that's my biggest concern. I feel like that diagnosis had a lot to do with me being here starting in 2009, because it was, what's this year? It was diagnosed in 2022. And we like to walk. We leave our house, we go to Washington Park, and there's times we have to walk through it. And so we either turn around or we just don't walk at all. And that's very restricting for a homeowner, no matter where they live. It shouldn't happen. But there's some serious health concerns going on around here. And, I don't know what is attributed to all that stuff or not. But, and I'm not saying that this is the reason for that, but it's a shame that, you come here healthy and then you end up trying to move because you're not anymore.
And I would like to add a little bit of something to the boom effect. Like Eva has said, the booms, everybody knows about them, but that boom, sometimes you can be moving around in your home and all of a sudden you've got a bam. And it sometimes with an old person like myself, it can scare you into no return. It's really kind of scary. And that's something that I think is not good for anybody. It's just your environment should be a safe environment where you can live and work, be comfortable in. That's what I have to say about the booms.
Well, I just want to start out by saying my first experience with the booms. When we were engaged, I lived in Choctaw, and we had a fire, and they had us evacuate our homes. And so I called her. She lived where we live now. Called her to let her know what was going on, and I asked her if she had room for me to sleep, an extra bedroom or something for me to sleep. And I ended up in the living room on the couch, and that was my first experience on the couch before. See, it was probably 6-something in the morning.
Oh my God.
I mean, I didn't know what was going on. I'm a veteran and retired veteran, and you talking about jumped off the couch and was looking around thinking something had hit the house or something. I had no idea what was going on. So that was my first experience. We got married in 2009, and since then it's just been, like she said, it startles me. It doesn't scare me to the point where I'm concerned about maybe, dying or having a heart issue or stress over it. But the thing that I've experienced is my home. I've got cracks all over my house that have come since I've lived there, and I'm pretty sure those cracks are a result of those booms that we have. Because sometimes they shake the house.
Yeah.
And if the house is shaking, it's doing some damage to the foundation. So,
Got to be.
Yeah, we have a 2-story house, and so it does feel like the car comes crashing in the bottom floor if you're not on the bottom. It's that bad. So there's a variety of levels. So the minor ones, the sad thing is we kind of feel like, oh, it's just another boom when those minor ones come, because we're so used to it. We're kind of numb to it, and we shouldn't be. Yeah. But there are times when those really bad ones come, and it shakes the house and your body. It's just so startling. Yeah.
The first time I heard them, I moved down in 2005, and I thought, my goodness, what is that? So I called one of my siblings and said, did something boom over it? They said no. So I, walked out on the porch and started looking. And so I called the concrete plant down there. And I said, did you all let something off or do something that caused the boom? They said, oh, that's not us. Then they told me where it was coming from. So, but, the first time you hear it is really, disturbing, because you don't know what it is,
Right.
and you don't know if you need to take cover.
Right.
So,
And I think that was where I was speaking of a point of no return. Eva and myself are some of the seniors in the neighborhood, and it could scare us into a heart attack, if you're not expecting them. And that sounds a little childish, but it's very real.
Yeah.
Very real.
I can imagine it's scary for like pets and kids too in the
Yeah.
area. I know the last group mentioned there's a nursery nearby. And that's probably very traumatic for kids to just experience at a young age. And have any of you had any experience like calling the Action Center or DEQ about these explosions?
Oh, yeah, we've done that a lot.
Yeah.
We
So
can
let's
wore
see.
that line out.
So the Action Center was the first resource that we utilized for several years, and they said stop because they couldn't do anything. I think we did that 3 or 4 years. We went from there to the fire department, I believe the police department too, and then Miss Davis, our fearless leader, has been talking to the mayor and the city council and the DEQ. I think every resource that we can possibly tap into, we have, and have not gotten any major results yet.
Major. Yeah, they built a wall that's supposed to absorb. It's hard to tell that it's working though.
Yeah.
It seems like they're just as loud as they were before, even after the wall was built. So
Not as frequent as
Disappointing.
before, but yeah, but
Right.
the impact is just as strong.
yeah, very, very disappointing.
And the wall wasn't until last year,
Yeah,
you know.
just happened last year.
And we have, you know, I've been complaining since '05. Marion grew up down here, right?
I grew up, but I left and
Okay.
came back in 2009 when the pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the name of that project I was a part of. It was women getting together to photo project.
The photo voice.
Photo voice,
Voice.
thank you.
I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't remember what,
Gina.
yeah, Gina did that, what year that was, but she gathered about 25 black women who either lived in this community or used to, or has experience or a heart for this community. And so they just gave us a charge to go out with our cameras and take pictures of what either gives life or brings death. And it was interesting from the eyes of all those women. I don't remember how many months this took place, but we got to see some areas of Northeast Oklahoma City that were sort of hidden and not talked about anymore. And we got to tour some of these areas too, but the storyline from each woman was amazing, because one of them kind of pointed out all of the oil rigs that are in the neighborhood right next to a house. You don't find that in any other neighborhood in Oklahoma City. So that's one example. And of course, the sidewalks and how broken they were and not fixed, and the trees coming over into the walking path. But that oil rig thing really got my attention, because I did not pay attention to that, because it's kind of something we live with when we shouldn't. So it's just the strangest paradigm shift that took place. So that's the closest thing that I've experienced, is just being a part of that wonderful project, just kind of laying eyes on Northeast Oklahoma.
What is your hope for the future of the JFK neighborhood?
I'll start while I'm thinking. So one of the reasons why I came to JFK is because my father grew up around here. He went to the only school that blacks could go to back then, which is Douglas. I'm sure you've heard of that. Douglas High School. And so that was just kind of my way of coming back to my roots. I came from Moore, Oklahoma, where we didn't have any environmental issues, so I didn't even know that was a thing. And so to come here from a heart perspective, you know, and then have all these issues that's a part of living is just kind of crazy. Sorry, I'm going off of your question. So what is my hope and future for JFK neighborhood is for someone like me who has a desire to go back to their roots or come to their community to be a part of it, to not ever have to worry about things like this. It's not something you think about before you decide to build a house in a location. now I will from now and on, forever, I will think about this and research this, but a 20-something or 30-something-year-old who's not in your field is not gonna know to think about, are there environmental issues? Is there, recycling plant near? Is there all these things? And so I will forever research that, but I don't want anyone, regardless of what your background is, to have to deal with this in any city. We have a right to have clean air. We have a right to have property that doesn't damage based on booms. Everyone has that right. Our house is paid off. We have a paid off home in a black neighborhood that now is being damaged, and it feels like we can do nothing about it. I just don't want that for anybody else in any generation coming forward.
And I agree with the question. My house will be paid for in November. And the idea that I own property that may be losing value,
Right.
it's kind of disturbing. Because I thought, okay, this is going to be my last house. I'll buy a brand new house. I'll enjoy my retirement. When I first came, I sat out on the porch every morning. I no longer do that. But, and like she said, I don't want the children and the grandchildren to have to face these issues.
And also, with all that has already been said, my home also is paid for, but mine is one of the older homes. But it's so nice to be, that's the American dream. One of the American dreams, to buy a home and have it paid for and enjoy your retirement. That's it. And to know that the possibility exists that it's no good for you, even after going through and living the American dream.
Well, I just echo what my wife said. I'm thinking of my grandkids all the time. They come and spend time with us, and we do a lot of outdoor stuff. And a time where they can come and we can do things, we can do what we do out, because we're outside people. We bike, we walk, and we do all those things. I'm looking forward to a time that we can, as well as everyone else in our neighborhood, can enjoy the outdoors, especially in the spring and the summer, because most of the wind is coming from the north in the wintertime, but in the summertime, when you want to spend more time outside, it's coming from the south or the southwest.
Yes, indeed.
And it just kind of hinders that. And so I'm just looking forward to a time that our neighborhood will enjoy some of the same luxuries and privileges that other neighborhoods are having in the metro area.
We have that right. We have that right. We've earned it. And they told you guys to watch out for us. We're hard to get along with, like they said. But we do love our homes and our life as Americans, okay? And I don't think that's a hard thing to accept when you live in this country. I really do not.
First, let me say that JFK is an amazing neighborhood. We're very active, and we're led by an amazing woman who will not stop with the drip. And we love that about her. Yes, the slow drip. And so we appreciate everything that she has done and everything you guys are going to do. Generally speaking, just continue to research and tap into every resource that you have access to on our behalf. Because the more voices that are heard, the better off, we will all be here in our neighborhood, because we're shouting, we're screaming, we're yelling as loud as we can, as often as we can. So your help will be very much appreciated. Recommendations would be great, as well as presentations to the right audiences at the right time. If that's the city council, the mayor, DEQ, EPA, whomever that group is. That would be awesome in your limited time that you have. I'm just brainstorming.
I was going to say, well, continue to do what you're doing, and to add to it, a lot of the things that I've been thinking about is what's going to be for our good is probably not going to be for the good of the companies that are these people that are businesses around us. There's got to be some other areas of the country where something like this has happened, and if it has happened, how are each of us accommodated? If the companies have to be relocated, what options do they have in order for it to be good for both parties? Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I was thinking about, and if there's a way that you can do more monitoring, or do you have access to equipment that will actually, be more beneficial in the monitoring to determine really whether it's dangerous or not. And the smoke, if the smoke is blowing out of the plant and is blowing up, is there a way for that company to redirect that smoke so it doesn't just go through the neighborhood? Maybe if it means a extra tall, what do you call it? A
Smokestack.
Stack that will keep it well above us. I mean, it doesn't eliminate the fact that we may still get the residue, but something to keep the air from literally a fog just comes through the neighborhood, and there's got to be a better way. So if there's research that you can do to find, ways to alleviate that would be beautiful.
I would like to see something done. The old houses have been here, but our new houses have been built since 2000.
Yeah.
They should never have been allowed to be built.
Exactly. That's right.
So, maybe city council needs to work on it, but something needs to be done so that people are not allowed to move into areas that are environmentally inadequate.
So full disclosure is what needs to happen.
Right.
Just like they're doing with the lead paint in the houses,
Right.
this needs to be a full disclosure situation. So I love that.
Yeah.
I do too. And also, I am 76 years old. And I was brought to the home where I'm living now. And excuse me, I'm really surprised that the home is still standing. I really am, with all that it has experienced throughout the years. And I have to agree with Eva. The newer homes, they shouldn't have been carried through what they have been through. And the home that I'm living in does have some, what do I want to say, feedback on what the booms and all the
Consequences. Consequences.
Yeah, the consequences of being in this area has done to it, but it is still standing. So again, I say it needs to be whatever you can do for us. All the information, representatives, community action programs, whatever we can get done here would be truly appreciated.